everybody, welcome to Talk, Teach, Play. My name is Aaron Locks. I'm the CEO and founder of the National Academy of Athletics, and I'm excited today to discuss the topic of how youth sports became a multi-billion dollar industry. And my good friend Greg, I'll introduce in just a second, is going to join us. I want to make sure that those of you that are maybe checking us out for the first time, do me a favor, go ahead and click on subscribe and get connected with us. There's lots of different topics. What we do here at Talk, Teach, Play is virtually anything youth sports, we bring the topics in. And I appreciate a lot of you for sending in the questions that have led to the topics. In fact, this one today came from two parents, which are understanding like what happened in youth sports, because when they were kids, they just played, and where we go. So Greg, I appreciate you coming on board. How are we doing?
I appreciate it, Aaron. Thanks for having me today.
Listen, one thing I've learned about you in a short period of time of us getting a chance, because we never met face to face, but obviously doing a few projects together, is that you're somebody that's done their homework. I mean, the fact that you're a director of coaching, you've got grassroots coaching education through, you're an educator for U.S. Soccer, you're the president of the West Coast Soccer Association, and oh, by the way, you got your master's in kinesiology. So I would say at this point, we got this from the soccer world, there's no doubt, but also athletics and kids. So I'm really excited to get your perspective on this particular topic.
Yeah, well, I appreciate again having me on. I would say that the titles or the jobs and the roles and responsibilities that I have are a direct result of my upbringing. So when your parents say, how did we get here? My parents are probably asking the same question, but more like, how do you make a living, right? How are you here and actually do this? Because we toiled in the trenches for volunteer hours and $50 refunds. So that's kind of how I came through the system.
Great. So let me ask you a question about this then. So tell me a little bit about your background in terms of like your upbringing with sports and because this particular topic, but also just sports in general.
Yeah. Well, it started. So I grew up in the Bay Area. My father went to Cal. My mom went to Mills College. They were counterculture type of upbringing. So going to college in the late 60s, early 70s. My dad was in ROTC. My mom was the daughter of a nuclear physicist. Wow, so, okay. They were working for the government. My dad was an Army brat, traveling the world. And so through that process, he fell in love with sports himself. He was an all-European track and field competitor and played, high school football, and then kind of fell in love with soccer, which is my passion, in college. And he tells it he had a Brazilian goalkeeper, an English center defender, a Spanish center mid, and an Italian forward. So his intramural fraternity team was very, very successful. And so while I grew up, growing up product of the 80s, and the participation trophy explosion, played a lot of different sports. So I was on a third string basketball team. I was the half mile champion for the Bay Area for my third and fourth grade years. But, really, and I played a little bit, baseball. For me, baseball, I was the fastest on the team. So where did they stick me? Center field. Right. So, and leadoff hitter, and I was a switch hitter. So I was told to slap the ball down from the left side, had like an on-base percentage of like 950 or some crazy number, and didn't make the all-star team because I didn't hit home runs and I stood out in the outfield. And for me, the stimulus of soccer was at that age really, really important. I love to move and chase the ball down. And I don't know if you can see it through the camera, but I'm only 5'6", but I was the runt of the class in every year up through 6th or 7th grade. So I was the smallest person, not necessarily boy. It was boys and girls. Wow. So I was just, kind of on the underside. Soccer is, it was a small man's game, right? And right. It had the right characteristics. And so that's where I fell in love with it.
Got it. So I mean, obviously, soccer is one of those sports. When I grew up, to be honest, soccer was like the other sport. But it was interesting, especially a good friend of ours, Andrew Zemer, kind of turned me on to soccer when I kind of watched them play. They played it differently. and how they approached it. So it really
Mhm.
kind of drew me in as well. But all right, so when we talk about sports in this huge industry, this billion-dollar industry, what's going on, I'll share my experience a little bit. I at one point had owned the Superstar Invitational basketball camp, and we used to take kids from all over that would come in high school, and then the college coaches would come watch them compete against themselves. Max Shapiro actually started it, and then I bought it from him, and I took over and was involved and engaged in the process. And I remember that back then, there wasn't AAU travel ball all over the place. There wasn't those opportunities. There was very few opportunities for kids to get seen, and it wasn't a hugely expensive opportunity for these kids. It was really about giving them the opportunity of they want to play in college, and there was education, this whole deal. But now it seems like it's shifted so much to where you just get your local 8 kids and say, we're a travel team and here we go. And oh, by the way, if you just pay this much money, and there's this joke I hear sometimes that you're only about $30,000 from becoming a college scholarship athlete. What the heck does that mean? Well, if you pay to play in our program, we can make that happen. And we both know that's probably not the case. So tell me about your journey and a little bit about that and your experience with that, because I know you deal with it on a lot of levels.
Yeah, so just to kind of give a little background, growing up playing in Concord, there was no competitive program. There was just an AYSO recreational organization. I played for that, was on the All Stars, the select team. I remember I was probably about 7 or 8 years old, went up to Davis, and they had a big event called the Davis World Cup. So each team that entered was actually representing a different country in this tournament. With our team, we had a lot of very, very successful players and did pretty well in that regard. After a year or two of that, and being about 8, 9 years old, my parents looked for a competitive program, so a travel program. The only one that existed was something called Concord Athletic League, which I believe was a subsidiary of a PAL, of a police athletic league.
Okay.
Really not geared towards the structure that they were looking for. So went back to the recreational side, and in that year, they developed and designed the very first competitive soccer club in Concord, which was called Diablo Valley Soccer Club. My dad wrote the original charter. My mom was the registrar for 15 plus years.
Wow.
So from that, and at that point, and obviously it was a volunteer-based coach program, but it became travel soccer. Versus just your recreational leagues.
So wait, let me pause you for a second because I want to make sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So basically, at 10 years old or whatever it was, there was this need for more competition, and the difference between rec and competitive. We'll talk in a second, because obviously there should be more kids playing rec than competitive, because that's right, naturally. But so, and that was a passion of your parents to educate and help. But what do you think the reason was? To get you a college scholarship, or to get you to get more competitive soccer? What do you think it was? What was the benefit?
I think they, from both of them, looked at each other as community leaders. So they were also in the Exchange Club, the Chamber of Commerce, any service group. That was just their makeup, right? It was to serve others who are in need, and with their background, skill sets, and intelligences and whatnot, were allowed to actually do that thing and not just talk about it around the around the watering hole, but actually actionize it. So that's really what it came from.
Okay, because I remember, when I grew up again, and I was in Marin County, just across the bay in Northern California. But if you weren't an all league player, then you weren't playing on a travel squad. You know what I mean? Realistically, you were a rec player, and that was okay. It was what it is in terms of different sports. But so the transition, because now it's become so much. I mean, it's such a money maker now. So when do you see like that transition that went from what your parents were doing, which is to get kids an opportunity to learn more about soccer? I mean, I love the story, by the way. At another time, we'll talk about your dad's college intramural squad. That sounds like, I mean, how they even communicate different languages, right? But what a great way to bring a community together, right? But think about this. When does it shift from being, not just rec ball, I get it, but okay, we're going to get the better players together. We're going to train them, right? better,
Yeah.
and then go compete against other better competition. When do you think that shift happened?
Well, in soccer,
Yeah.
I think, in 1989, the United States had already been given the ability to host the '94 World Cup. And in 1990 in Italy, they had to earn their way in. And it was until the last game, what they call the shot heard around the world from Paul Caligiuri, who I've met several times and is a fantastic individual. But he smashed a 35-yard laser beam into the net to go into the World Cup. So from 1990, at that time, the World Cup was only on the Spanish-speaking channels, except for
Right.
the U.S. games. So I watched and taped VHS, not beta. So
Yeah,
that's where
right.
we're at. VHS had won, or VHS had already won the war. But I taped every single game of that World Cup, and I watched it over and over and over. So I want to say that around the early '90s, and knowing that the World Cup was coming and the massive investment, Alan Rothenberger, who was a massive influence from the U.S. Soccer Federation to build the marketing and branding of soccer, kind of came in 1996. The MLS, Major League Soccer, started, and then you have, of course, the '99ers. The U.S. women won the World Cup in 1991.
Right.
That also helped. In '95, I believe they lost to Norway in China, I believe it was. But in '99, we hosted the Women's World Cup, and that's really when things flipped on their head. When you had 100,000 fans watching the Women's World Cup, going to shoot a shootout,
Right.
winning in the way that they did, that really changed it all. And in Northern California, through that '90s process, it went from parent coaches to let's get educated and let's learn this game. Let's learn how to train. Our good friend Andrew Zemer,
Yeah.
the Zemer Brothers soccer camps, which was was a camp company in the '90s and early 2000s. They had a live-in complex that people would go off to,
Right.
and just spend a week there. They insourced Dutch coaches and
Right.
other coaches from around the world to teach the game in their Dutch philosophy and Dutch way, which is very attractive. Their philosophy is this concept called total voetbal, which is just a free flowing, no holds barred. I'm not going to win 1-0. I'm going to win 9-8 or lose 9-8.
So,
Right?
so a lot more. And as someone who did not grow up as a soccer fan, I'd rather watch a 9-8 than a 1-0 any day of the week. But, but right.
So would I.
So would you.
I'd rather coach a 9-8 than a
There you
1-0.
go. So again, focusing back on it. So, in the basketball world, where I saw obviously, the Michael Jordans come in, right, and Bird and Magic. Well, what those things as they came in, what they brought with them was this, right? Was the sponsors, was the Nikes, was when Converse. I remember they called them the weapons. They were the shoes that Bird and Jordan wore, were against each other, the whole deal. So the money that came in to the pros, I'm still trying to kind of digest how it gets down to the point where I remember the commercials, man, be like Mike, right? And they had the commercials. It's like, and Bo Jackson and the Nike just did it, right? But the money now seems to be really in the youth. And that's, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so much. And hey guys, transparent, right? I'm in the youth sports industry, right? I run sports training programs for a living, right? But what we focus on is helping kids fall in love with playing sports, right? That's why if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, do so we'll get you hooked up and you can see what's going on, but follow what's happening. But at the National Academy of Athletics, our focus is helping recreation departments help recreational kids get a chance to play. Yeah. But now all of a sudden I'm seeing families that are literally, you're going, well, we're going to be gone for 16 weeks a year. We're going to be spending money on hotels and travel and all these other things. And it just became this huge thing. What do you think is attributing to that? Do you think it's the allure of the college scholarship, or is it like, what do you think it is? What do you see on the soccer?
No, I don't. I mean, just seeing it as I went through it, it really is the matter of the marketing and technology that came. So in 1996, little known fact, Al Gore opened the internet on the West Coast at my high school. So when the internet came on, that turned all sports and all of life into a global, frenzy. right? We had the internet boom, or the dot-com boom of the late 90s. That really allowed marketing companies, products to be globally connected. I think you were saying it before, the ball is the universal language,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
You can throw a ball in front of a dog, in front of a cat, in front of a lion. They will all go chase it.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with children, and the same thing with me. It's why I don't run for anymore. But I do play, right? So I need to be chasing something.
Right.
And I will say that I think that one of the main aspects was simultaneously, while you had this big marketing push, the Michael, the Air Jordans, that was probably, thinking back, that was the number one thing that pushed, where a person became a real brand in and of themselves. And
Absolutely.
he was the originator. I mean, everybody probably had something, but Air Jordans,
Still to this day. Are you
thing.
kidding me? My
It's
kids
its own
spend
company now.
$150 a
Yeah.
month on those things. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that part where professional athletes understood the branding side of the world
Got it.
at the professional level. Now at the youth level, I saw, and I was a physical education teacher. So, I was K-8 PE teacher, working within schools. There was a significant shift away from funding PE in elementary schools specifically, but also middle school and high school. And when that happened, which is around the late 90s, early 2000s, late 2000s, when you had the Great Recession, when you started saying the money's not going from taxpayer dollars to educate all, then those PE teachers, like myself, I graduated from Chico State in 2005. I came into a market where, with a master's degree in sport, I was able to become a private coach and earn, a living. Now, I did spackle together 7 different jobs to do that,
Right.
but that the shift away from physical education and quote unquote classical gym as being an issue, right? So everybody had maybe had such a negative connotation of physical education, what it actually was.
Yeah.
There also, from an academic standpoint, was the evolution from PE into kinesiology.
Right.
And I think that's a really big distinction, and where you're talking not just sport, but sports science. And when you start
It's
looking,
like pre-med, right? I mean,
yeah,
I remember,
so,
I'm going to be a PE teacher, and then I go there, and back when, because I'm old enough, I took PE classes, and
mhm,
then I got to Sonoma State. It was like pre-med. I go, yeah, I'll stick with business and communications. That's
yeah.
too much science for me. Really
Yeah.
thinking about it.
So,
Absolutely.
so I think that was a major reason for the
It plays
evolution of
along with it. Makes
the
sense.
club
Yeah.
sports, because even in elementary schools or whatever, what was institutionalized was the school sport spirit,
Right.
right? High schools against high schools, middle schools against middle schools. When that starts evaporating, then it was replaced by what I would call the youth sport club wars, right?
Yeah.
It's the Socias versus the Greasers. It's the Montagues and the Capulets. Every city is divided,
Right.
right?
What's interesting about that? I remember my PE teachers, and I just
Mhm.
remember the journey. And what I liked that I feel is missing now a little bit, and I want to ask you the difference of these. When we played in high school, and I played lots of different sports, my coach was also either my PE teacher or my typing teacher or my speech teacher or my
Mhm.
math teacher, whatever. So there was a connection that was there, and an accountability and a relationship that's way different than I'm going to travel to a different city to train with kids from all different cities so we can compete. So from an accountability standpoint, but all right, I'll get off my soapbox. But let me ask you a question. If a parent's watching this, what could you
Mhm.
tell them the difference between their child playing, and let's stick in the soccer world because that's your
Mhm.
bailiwick, being a rec player,
Mhm.
right? Like I'm going to play in my local rec league, or I'm going to play on a travel or competitive. And I guess travel and competitive are not when I say mutually exclusive, right? Because there is still competitive
Mhm.
local league, right? Is there such a thing? I mean,
Mhm.
how does it break down for you?
Yeah. So semantics are important when we're talking about these things. For me, anything that's youth and amateur is both recreational and competitive. So I think
Wait. Say that again. I want to make sure they get it. So guys, pay
so
attention. This is
I
good stuff. Yeah.
this is so for me in amateur youth sports, everything is recreational and competitive, right? There's not for children who are 6 years old to call what they do recreational alone minimizes or diminishes the effort that they want to put in to be victorious, right? So it is competitive, but it is, local. So I would classify it a little bit differently in terms of seasonal play, or multi-seasonal play or annual play,
Okay.
localized or, regional national travel. So I would frame parents to start thinking about what their resources are, what their child's desires are, what their family budget is.
Okay.
But recreational soccer, or specifically, if you have a rec program, it is a scholastic-based program, right? One of the big issues within soccer is it was structured on the academic calendar. So first graders primarily played with first graders, second graders with second graders in leagues. What US soccer did about 3 or 4 years ago is they changed to the chronological calendar. And so now a 2008 plays with a 2008. They might be in different grades, right? So depending on where your birth year is, not 09s and 09s, 2010s, 2010s. So that because of the need and the especially at the introductory level of sport and team sports
Right.
at kindergarten, first, second grade, a kindergartner is significantly different mentally and in terms of maturity and cognition than a first grader. First grader is different than second grader. It doesn't equal out until about your junior, senior year. So when you're starting to mix people or mix academic, aptitudes with, the chronological, it has caused a major downshift in the introduction to sport. So whether recreational soccer is desirable or not, it needs to be, you need to at least have some idea that the reason why parents want to get their children involved in any sport when they're under the age of 10 is to make friends, is to have fun, is to stay active, and is to grow their socialization skills.
So,
Right?
I mean, what you just said is like, let's frame that up. That's perfect. And yet, it's a strange one because my belief is that when they're under 10, keeping score and all these other factors, it's kind of an interesting deal because what I'm seeing is
Mhm,
that if a kid nationally signs up to play a sport,
mhm,
um, after just 2 seasons, they quit playing it because it's too much pressure and it's not fun anymore.
mhm.
So, how do we take that? Now, again, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, so someone's figured it out. But what do you recommend for a parent that, okay, my kid is 8 and I like soccer, so I want them to play soccer. Where do you say they start?
Yeah. So same, if you look at your methodology, the talk, teach, play
Right.
methodology with the United Soccer Federation and with Grassroots Coach Education, the philosophy that they have put together that we adopt is called play, practice, play. Children want to play. It's number one. It's a 4-letter word that every child loves to say, right? Let's go out and play, right? When they hear don't do that, stop playing, that stunts their abilities.
Right.
And so when we look at these things, when they're looking for a program, look at something that focuses on really what's important, right? The socialization skills, fun as the primary importance. And what's at the center of fun? It's the letter U, but you are at the center of fun. So baseball is an enjoyable sport for a lot of kids. For
Right.
me, it was miserable. I didn't have a great experience, not because I didn't like sport, but because of the position I was in, because of, it just didn't fit my personality. So knowing what kind of personality your child has,
Right.
get them to try things that they don't like. I
Right.
had to do track and field because my dad loved it and was all European until the age of 8th grade, right? And like I go back, third and fourth grade, I was the half-mile champion. But as the run to the litter, at fifth grade, kids started growing, and I didn't. Their legs were longer, and it's an endurance race.
Yeah.
So I think when you're looking at Does the philosophy of a club or of an organization match your philosophy? Does that club have a organized coach education program? One thing that I personally pride myself on, and it's why I'm a coach educator at the grassroots level, is I feel like my number one goal is to educate and assist volunteer coaches with either no sport experience or some sport experience to become competent educators of a group of children.
Love it. It's
Right.
great. So wait.
And
So I want to keep going down this path because
yeah.
you're walking me somewhere. I think as a parent, I could really get this. This is good information. Thank you for that. So if I've got an 8-year-old or 9-year-old, 10-year, whatever the age, and they kind of like this. So when do I make the decision to kind of go, I want to try more competitive, or I want to try? In the old days, it used to be if you were a top athlete or you were more competitive by nature or
Mhm.
a better player, then it made sense to go play more competitive. If you
Mhm.
weren't, then but one of the challenges I've seen or
Mhm.
heard is that if there's not some sort of equal play opportunity, I can be the bottom of a 12-man squad, 12 kid squad, and the team is winning and we're having success, but I don't get to play very much because I'm not very good. And that's called playing up. And I don't know that that necessarily is always the best. So
Mhm.
how do you recommend they find that balance in that spot, right? I'm throwing it at you, brother.
Man, that's a very difficult question because each child is different, each family is different, each sport is a little bit different. From my experience, the way I would see it is, what kind of teacher do you want your child to be connected with? There are a lot, I am the product of a parent coach, right?
Yeah.
The standard that I was held to was much higher than my peers at a recreational level.
Yeah.
Why? Because my dad was the coach, or he was the manager, or he was the program director. My standard, and that was a lot of pressure to put on me
Yeah.
personally. And so I had to raise my game, where at 11 years old I was an adult of other 11-year-olds. That's how it really was.
Came about, right.
On the opposite end of that, there are a lot of free passes that some parents give their children because they love them and they don't want to convolute that issue. So it depends on what kind of teacher do you want your child to have? If you want a professional, trained, invested coach who really, enjoys the sport and things like that, then that travel experience, or that, paid for experience, you're paying for, for the most part, for the skill of the coach, right? Their experience, their knowledge, their licensing. But also there's the premium, and this is the thing that, when you go back, why does youth sport cost so much? Look at the cost, the hourly costs of facility rental,
Mm.
and that is a major expenditure in competitive organizations. Now, in recreational and school organizations, it's free or almost free because it's part of taxpayer dollars,
Right.
schools, and it's minuscule. I mean, if we wanted to rent a school field, it's upwards of around $10-15 an hour. We want a turf field, it's $110 an hour.
Got it.
So that
And
path.
that doesn't include obviously the travel and all that. But again, I'm just trying to think of, if I'm a parent and I'm trying to make the decision. So let's what you said. There's some benefits there, which I kind of want to capture on. Obviously, for me, I'm going to recommend to, if you're a parent, you check this out. Go watch the program, interview the coach, find out who's going to be coaching your kids. Because just because it's a great organization doesn't necessarily mean that that person is going to be coaching your child. And I know
Mhm,
we do that anyways. I mean, we want to find out who's teaching our kids, et cetera, right?
mhm,
But
mhm.
so the difference most of the time, would you say, and again, I'm just throwing it out there, but that if you're playing recreation 99.9% of the time, it's a parent volunteer, right? And there's nothing
I
wrong
would,
with that. And we need that. And
yeah.
as I'll tell you what, if you've never been a parent volunteer, go parent volunteer coach. It's a great
Yeah,
experience,
yeah,
right?
I would say that it's no longer a volunteer. It's usually the voluntold, right? If nobody steps up to coach this team, we do not have a team, and your children have no place to play. That's
Fair enough.
where what has become volunteerism people are paying for coaches so they don't have to do the work.
Got it.
Because you know what? Even a volunteer position at any sport organization, it is stressful. right?
Oh yeah.
It is you're talking about it at the dinner table. You're worrying about it while you're at your full-time job. It consumes you.
Right.
So
There's
so
a
I
lot of moving parts.
yeah,
I get it.
and a lot of parents they don't want to put themselves in that position. So again, I go back to my objective and goal is to enable and empower volunteers, and more importantly is identify, train, and bring in those who have potential
Right.
to be successful in the field of youth sport and physical education.
So if you're interested in coaching, obviously, I mean, there's tons of stuff. We have stuff through our academy. You've got, so there's tons of information out there
Mm.
getting certified in training coaching. But again, just sticking with those parents and those players now. So it seems to me that really, as a parent, you got to investigate the difference, not just of the league or the travel squad or whatever it is, but
Mhm.
also spend some time with your child and find out kind of what within yourself, what do they want? I know for me, when I talk to my kids before they played, I would ask them, do you want to play? You know what I mean? Because once you commit, you commit. And then we did a little travel, we did rec, we did a little bit of everything. But ultimately, I mean, I played competitive basketball until I was 52 years old, right? I know I don't look a day over 53, but anyways, but that's part of the deal, right? Is to get them out there and want to have a lifelong love of the sport. So
Mhm.
that's a part of it. So getting competitive too early can also push them out. That's another topic for another day. But I guess then my question would be for you, how would you go about if you're a parent of a 10-year-old researching, checking into a soccer club or whatnot? How would you go
Yeah.
through that?
Well, I think you brought up a really good point. Commitment and accountability. It seems like those are foreign concepts for parenting
Yeah.
right now. Go research what you can really commit to. There's nothing more aggravating as a coach to find somebody or a family, a child who's wishy-washy.
Mm,
If you're going to ask your child, do you want to do this? Are you ready to commit? And this is what commitment means.
yeah.
You're going to show up. You're going to have bad days and you don't want to show up. That's okay.
Right.
But I also got out of physical education. I was at a private school and I got out of it because I had kids faking getting out of the car and twisting their ankle and they couldn't participate that day. That was really, really aggravating. And so I would say to do the research, what are you able to commit to? And that there are a lot of things that you have to look into when you're talking about commitment. It's time, it's travel, it's financial, it's psychosocial emotional, it's academic. So you really have to look at it in that regard. It's experiential,
Right.
right? And that's, and what are you willing to give up? There's a massive push right now across the state of California to get CIF to start play again,
Right.
right? Because all these parents, it's almost their kids aren't playing, and the mental health issues that these kids are having
Totally.
is massive.
Yeah.
However, the mental health issues that the parents who don't know what to do with the 52 weekends that they now have had free, I think that's almost more like, what do I do with all this extra money? I don't know what to do. Like I want to spend something on, I want to go to a hotel in, the middle of nowhere, California, and I want to do this and I want to do that. And so it becomes also, it consumes you as well. So you have to really look at each family is a little different.
Right. Yep. Yep.
And the number one thing I would say to parents is let your child's experience, their experience, and guide them through it. Do
Got it.
not try and relive your glory years through your children.
Or reinvent
Right?
yourself if you weren't that good. And
Give
all of a
them
sudden you're going to make your,
opportunity
yeah.
to have buy-in,
Yeah.
right? Give opportunities to be accountable and to learn the things that sport brings to them,
Love it. All right.
right?
So let me ask you
And
one more thing
that's
that
what you're
to,
evaluating.
to
And
help your
and
to help
and
your kids along to get better, to help them as they're moving. Um, how are you
Mhm,
on? I know you mentioned the Zima Brother camps, and obviously we do camps. What do you think
mhm.
about camps and clinics and instruction and learning that's not necessarily league based, but more individual training and stuff like that? What do you recommend, or what do you think about that?
S- So in soccer, the camp model, which was, you have a summer free go do camps was replaced by annual training. Camps were great in the 80s when I did them, 90s, whatever. Uh, the camp models, there are a lot less of them. I would say that now it's not camps as much as clinics.
Right.
So 1 day exposures, little things like this. Experiences are great.
Right.
I think it's just a matter of what your family wants to dedicate their time and resources to.
Right.
I mean, there's robotics camps. I've seen sport camps that dovetail with science camps. I've seen, or electronics camps or computer programming. Find out what your child is interested in,
Right.
but get them out to see the world.
Right. But more specifically, I guess my thought is
Yeah.
that if I'm a rec player, I know that if I have my 8, 9, 10-year-old, 7-year-old, whatever it is, go to a basketball camp or soccer camp or baseball camp for a week, they're going to get someone who's paid to be there to teach the fundamentals that they may fall in love with it more. They may be more comfortable. They may have more fun. And then they may want to go, now I'll go play competitively.
Yeah. Okay. So in that regard, if you're looking to find avenues of inspiration, camps are amazing, right? So if the organization that you're working with has a solid vision that their coaches actually enjoy and employ, then at the end of any week, that child is going to be, it's like going to a, motivational speaking seminar. They
Right.
come out of it, and they are ready. They're ready to rock.
Yes.
That's what I think. Camps are great. If you want to dabbling is great. I think that's definitely something, because that's something that each child can benefit from when they don't know what they're interested in.
We
Right.
have a lot of kids that'll sign up for 1 week of lacrosse, 1 week of soccer, 1 week of basketball, 1 week of flag football, and they get this different experience. And then a lot of parents say it's great because they're getting to use their body and try different things, and then they go back and play their competitive or their travel elsewhere. So, all right, so just for time, because we got to wrap up and keep within our time frame here. What would you recommend then? So we've talked about from this huge billion-dollar industry, and we kind of figured out a little bit of kind of how we got here. So what's the next step in terms of for a parent to get the biggest value for their investment in their kids' sports experience or journey?
So I think that the steps that I think they got to be incremental, right? I don't go into it. Don't think that the price tag will equate the same level to the experience. And I think what I mean by that is exactly what you're saying with, your player number 12 on a roster, and you may be on the best team in the area and travel all over the world but not play a minute. And there are some children who see that as an opportunity, see that as a way that they can try and peck up the odor. Some languish and, quit the sport altogether because they didn't make it.
Right.
On the opposite end is, how do you deal with a child who's been cut from a high performance team and no longer made that team? Don't let them quit if it's something that they love and they're passionate about, because a lot of times they need that failure to succeed. Right. And working with young players, and, I rarely is the player who's 9 and 10 years old the best one on that team,
Right.
the one who achieves the highest level at the end of the pathway, right? It's a working process. So, when looking into investment, look at it as, what are they going to get out of it, and how are you going to support it, right?
And what are my goals and visions? When my kids go through, I want them to learn the life skills and the teamwork and those. I want them to learn to fall in love with playing sports in general, and then kind of find their path, whatever it turns out to be. And if my kids play recreational soccer or softball or basketball or whatever, as they go on through life, that's going to keep them healthy and part of the community. Because I think the one thing we didn't really talk a lot about, we'll do this another time because I really got some things that have popped up in my head, but just about the community that's built, because each sport has its own community. I know that if you're a parent out there and your child is getting involved in youth sports, there's a sports community that's pretty cool as well. But okay, hey, look, this has been Talk, Teach, Play. We got to wrap up with Greg Rubendall. I really appreciate your time. Great insights, good thoughts, and all that. Is there, if they want to get in touch with you, follow you, or connect with you, what's the best way that any parent that has some questions would want to do that, be able to do
So
that?
yeah, I mean, best way is through social media, Facebook. So Livermore Fusion Soccer Club, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. My email, greg@fusionsc.org. People, and if you have any questions regarding the entire experience, please feel free to reach out to me. I always tell people that I am employed by the children of the world, but yet my paycheck comes from a single source. So as much as I can help out and guide people through this process, that's why I coach other coaches, because I want that impact to be, magnified across the board. So
Love it.
appreciate your insight, Aaron, and being a part of it, and best of luck.
Yeah, keep on keeping on. All right. Well, everybody, this has been Talk, Teach, Play, where we talk everything youth sports. Today, I'm sure you picked up some tidbits, whether you're a coach, a player, a travel squad, whatever the case may be. Hopefully, we will see you again soon, or you'll see us again soon. Make sure to keep your questions coming in. It does help us to get better. I'm sure that I'll be getting some messages on this one, and we'll have some follow-up. You can follow us on Instagram and on social media. Best place you can also do is just go to nationalacademyofathletics.com. And I remind you, if you got a child out there or you're coaching, please always remember to play hard and have fun. Be well, everybody. Take care.
Take care.